What's up, everybody? It's James here from the Every Tenday stream and podcast. This is Talks Tenday, episode 1. Welcome along. Now, this is something of an experiment, and I think the experimental spirit is probably needs to be alive in all Dungeons and Dragons, right? So we're going to be doing this maybe on every week, every couple of weeks. And this is a chance to come together, to talk, to discuss D&D, to talk about D&D, especially for families, especially for young adventurers. If you're a parent and you're looking to want to start playing this game with your kids, like I was going back a couple of years, you're going to freaking love this. If you're a young person and you want to get started playing D&D and trying to convince your friends to get into the game is proving more of a challenge, right? Like you've maybe made them watch a little bit of Stranger Things or a little bit of the other streams like Critical Role or any of the other big streams, and they're still, the jury's out. You might want to get started with family members, siblings, that kind of thing, cousins. I don't know who you got in your family, but the joy that can come from starting the game, running the game with your family, we believe in that massively every Tenday. And in Talks Tenday, what we're going to be doing here is I'm just going to be riffing and jamming on a number of things that I think are kind of, well, they're important to me. Fans of the game might find something in here that's interesting. If you're a dungeon master or you're looking to be a dungeon master, you're looking to start the game, which I know a bunch of you that subscribe to our podcast and watch our streams, that's where you're at. You're wanting to get into it. I think you'll find something pretty good here. I'll be chatting about the campaigns. We've just finished campaign 1, 144 episodes that we actually recorded, and the last 44 of them we streamed. And probably we didn't get the very, very beginning of the campaign, but it would probably be close to 150 episodes. That just finished. So at the time that you're watching this, we've just come to the end of campaign 1. And we're about to go into campaign 2. And I would urge anybody who subscribes to our channel, hey, how you doing? Welcome along. I'm not a voice actor from LA. I'm not even American, as you can hear, as the vast majority of the D&D content that's out there seems to come from America, especially from the West Coast of America and from Hollywood. I got nothing against that. That's cool. I think it's really, really cool that, some of the people that were playing this game in their youth have risen to power in the creative industries and have been able to get D&D out to a wider audience. To that, I'm so thankful. But no, I'm coming to you here from England. I'm a dad of 2 kids and soon to be stepdad of another 5 kids. And for me, it's always been about family. D&D, I've played it a lot with my friends, but for us, it's always about family. The campaign we just finished is really one part of a story that, for me, has been running for 35 years. The campaign setting that we use in our D&D game, which you can probably just see up on the wall there, that's the continent of Aeon, where we set our game. This game really, and the setting that we play in, has been going for 35 years, because I started playing D&D at 10 years old with my brother. Hey, bro, if you're watching this, hey, how you doing? My brother also was a guest in some of our more recent episodes as the very character that he played, the kind of his main NPC when I was 10, 11, 12 years old when we were playing. So for us, this game that I get to now play with my children, and hopefully in the future, my stepchildren and maybe their children, right? This has been part of a continuation of an almost lifelong journey for me. Like I said, I was introduced to Dungeons & Dragons through the Red Box, released in 1983, I think it was. Started playing in 1987. I'm 45 years old now. I started playing in 1987 with the Red Box. Had a little bit of AD&D and then moved swiftly 2 years later into 2nd edition D&D. And that was for a huge amount of my life was second edition. Then I was growing up and trying to get a job, starting a family, all this kind of nonsense that you do in your 20s. So I missed third edition, fourth edition, 3.5, fourth edition, and all of that. And then I came back to D&D when my son Finley, one of our players in our Every Tenday campaign, when my son Finley hit 10, I was like, we're playing D&D. Because it was really simple. That was the age I was when I started. I believe on the red box, that's when it says you can play from 10 years and older. That's changed over the years, but at the time, 1987, that was the kind of the recommended age limit to start with. So when Finley hit 10, Charlotte was at this point 13. She'd just turned 13. So she had just become a teenager. My son had just turned 10, and I was like, they are ready. Whether they want to be or not, they're ready for D&D. And so what I was able to do was to literally take some of the mythos, some of the lore from that game with my brother. My brother was my dungeon master. It was literally just him and I playing D&D for years and years, up until he left home at sort of 17, 18. So I'd have been younger. I'd have been like 15, 16. That was when we stopped playing. And then I played a lot with my friends after that because I had to play this game. I freaking love this game. I think it's the greatest game in the world. And I had to play, but it was very sporadic. I was even thinking the other day, about like, what did I do when I couldn't play D&D? And that was why I loved Skyrim so much. On the PS3 when I started, and then to the PS4, I moved to play it. But the reason I love Skyrim so much is it was like the closest I could get to the feelings I had playing D&D. That's what it was. The closest I could get to it. And so Skyrim filled in like a 5, 6, 7 year period whilst I was waiting for my kids to grow up. So I would have my kids when they were super young just watch me play Skyrim. I didn't know it then, but I think I was just preparing them for what's to come. And then the minute they were old enough, the minute Finley turned 10, I was like, it's time to crack out the red box. And like I just started sharing the lore, and I kind of moved across. I migrated across a lot of the lore that I could remember, and having talks with my brother. Now, my brother wasn't a world builder DM, so he didn't have maps and lore and anything like that. He had nothing like that. He was more a narrative DM. He was more about the story. He was more about the inner development of our characters at the time, which now I look back on it, I'm like, man, that's sophisticated for a dude who started playing and DMing when he was 13, right? When he was 13. There's my bro, he's watching. Everyone holler in the comments, my bro's actually watching and on with us. It is all about the feeling, right? So when I was moving across, I'm so pleased my bro's here, right? So when we moved across and when I started like creating the world for Charlotte and Finley, right? The two players in our stream. And by the way, check out campaign 1. We've got the last 44 episodes. That's when we started streaming. We've got the entire campaign on our podcast. You go podcast.everytenday.com. You'll go to Anchor. You can watch them all. Do a little search for Every Tenday in Spotify. You'll find it on iTunes, wherever you listen. And thanks, by the way, to everyone that does listen. It's not an easy thing, man, to listen to hours and hours of people playing D&D. I don't actually think D&D is a good spectator sport. So I think it's amazing when people do. Like there's really only what I'll watch Critical Role, but I don't kind of watch it. I have it on in the background. I have it sort of playing while I'm doing other stuff. It's not a spectator sport. I think it's really good to watch other games to see how people play, just to not so you can copy it, but just so you can see it, And so getting back to the story, right? When as soon as Finley hit 10, that was the age I was when my brother unpacked. We went out together, and since he's watching, he'll know this, right? We lived in Norwich, which is in the middle east of the UK, of England, right? It's sort of the Fenlands. It's sort of like the marshes that Aragorn takes the hobbits through on his way to Weathertop. That's Norwich. That's Norfolk, and Weathertop is like Norwich. Anyway, that's where we were when we were playing D&D for the first time, and we went into Norwich city centre, which still, by the way, has this amazing historic castle there. So it's actually quite a cool city for us to grow up in, and it was very sort of medieval. And there was this little games shop called the Games Room, and my brother bought the red box. I don't have it here in the new office, but it's going to be here. I'm going to line the walls that I'm looking at now with all of the old archive books and rule sets. But I've still got that same red box that my brother bought. So I've got it. I've kept it so safe. And he bought it. And it's interesting because it's one of the few versions of D&D. I'd love to know which one you grew up on, by the way. Like, what was your first rule set that you got? Because they don't teach you how to play, except the red box. The red box is one of the first rule books of D&D. It actually teaches you how to play a little bit. Because do you remember there's that little quest you can do in the book? And Alina, the cleric, Alina the cleric, and you're a warrior, and you go in to fight Bargle the wizard, who's with me. But that's one of the only places where D&D shows you how to play and kind of walks you through how to play. Almost all of the other D&D, all of these books here, thousands of dollars worth of books here, none of them teach you how to play. What they are reference manuals, right? They're references. So it's like if you go, oh, all right, you hurl a fireball. You hurl a fireball, what happens? You know, and it's like, you go to the rule book just to get the reference. Yeah, shit, what does happen when a fireball goes off? What's the mechanics of that? What's the mechanics if you want to try and stab someone in the back? Well, these are reference manuals. They don't teach you how to play. I was taught how to play by my brother, who's watching now with us, and who is also Mistrider in episodes around 120, 121, 122, around there. My kids' characters meet Mistrider in those recent streams. So make sure you watch those because it's awesome. It's a very emotional gaming day for me to be at the table with my brother who had DM'd me, you know, amazing. And so how I learned to play was through that little example in the red books. And I was like, what? So these are like, what, fighting fantasy books? Like, you know, like Choose Your Own Adventure? Is it like that? And he's like, no. And so I learned to play the game from a brother, from a storyteller who was interested in character development. Like it was all about like the feel of it and the character development. And it was like me and my brother, we always had movies together. So cinema was something we had, right? And like in the days when you still had video stores, that was like mine and my brother's favorite thing to do was to go down to the video store. Because why? Because we loved stories, and we loved the feeling you get after a film, and then talking about it and talking about that. And so that was my brother's DM style. It was just painting the picture with his words and using music to establish feelings and all this kind of thing. And it was amazing. Now, and I think that gave me a real advantage because we weren't heavy on rules. I mean, we might pick up a book once during a game just to check something, but we weren't heavily into the rules in our game at all. It was so much was theater of the mind, theater of the heart. That's what it really is, right? Like theater of the heart. And that was mine and my brother's game for years, from maybe being 10 till I was about 14, 15. That was our game. So then as I grew up and I got into world building, which to me that's my juice. Like that's what I love, is making those feelings then into something real that other people can experience, and other people can get in there and walk around and have a sense of geography and of time and of space. To me, is like the ultimate creative force. But I had that influence from my brother, right? So I was able to combine the two. So I think I had this amazing upbringing in D&D because I had my brother's emotional storytelling and sense of being, right? Sense of being and character and who you were, and a chance to explore your own soul. That's what my brother's games gave me, was a space to explore your own soul and a place to do that in, right? A place to explore your own soul. And so I was able to bring that to my, and hopefully combo that up with my passion, which was the world building aspect, creating a whole reality to play around in. And I think I got a little bit of that from Skyrim. I think really helped tease that out of me, right? Like, because Skyrim, again, it's like this open world that you can explore. And so it's like, here's the setting, here's the canvas for you to, and there's structure in here and there's rules in here and everything, but this is the space for your explorations. And I've found that personally just so rewarding from my perspective. Yeah, my brother says, "Oh God, yes, light on rules." Whereas, like, I'm not heavy on rules. I'd say moderate to high on rules. And I love that aspect of the game, and I love the world building. I love the rules as boundaries, right? Rules as something to, in many ways, push against, right? And like that's what comes from increasing your character's power and stuff. We've had Dressur come through. Hey, Dressur, what's up? He says, the man, the myth, the legend. Were they super excited to get started with their first D&D campaign, or did they take some coercing beforehand? Right. Well, the first part of that question is a good one, because to begin with, I started a little too young for Finley. So I started a game, I'd say about 6 months before we actually started, which was January 2019, right? January 2019, we started the game. We started the podcast in April of that year. So we actually played a few games. We played maybe half a dozen games before we then started podcast, recording them and putting them online. So in campaign 1, you miss the first, I'd say 5, 6, maybe 7 games. You probably miss about 10, 12 hours of play, I'd say. And then we started putting them online. And it's so great, by the way. It's so cute because you get to hear Finley going through, and growing up. So especially Finley, because at 10 years old, he's got this high voice and he's still a cute little boy. And by the time we finish the campaign, he's now my height. He's like 5, well, he's a little shorter than me. He's getting on for 6 foot tall. And he talks in a deep voice like that. And he's this emo teenager now. So that was crazy. You get to see that in campaign 1. You get to see that happen real time, which is brilliant and a wonderful metaphor for, I think, what we're doing in the game, So anyway, to answer your question, they did take a little coercing. They were already getting heavily into video games and Skyrim and playing that, and like going back to pen and paper and dice rolling. I started a game with them, different characters to the ones that you meet in campaign 1, about 6 to 9 months before January 2019. So Finley was probably 9. And I was like, can we start playing? Let's see what happens if we start playing. And so we did. And I knew they weren't quite ready. They just weren't, developmentally, they weren't quite ready. And that took some coercion. I was like, come on, you'll love it. You'll love it. And I realized I was probably pushing them to play because I was itching to play. And then come January 2019, I wanted us to do something special other than just sit around gaming every time that they were with me, because I don't live with my kids. They see me every 10 days. Hence the name of our campaign. And also I like the fact that in the Forgotten Realms campaign setting, they measure time in 10 days rather than weeks. And I see my kids, I don't see them for 10 days and then I see them for 4. Then I don't see them for 10 days and I see them for 4. And so every 10 day was just a way for me to think about more than just, are we playing the game? Well, what am I doing when I'm with my kids that I don't live with? How can I make sure I'm having quality time with my kids? Because I don't get to kiss them to bed every night. I don't get to pick them up from school every day. And they're with me for this tiny window of a long weekend every other week. And it became more and more important to me that I kind of have some part in the morality of my children, and that I have something to do with their upbringing that isn't just, well, dad loves playing Skyrim with us as much as I love that game, and he'll take us to the cinema, and he's a pretty good cook. I wanted to have more of an input on who they were becoming as people, which you can't help if you're a parent. You'll definitely have an input, but more of a conscious input. And I was like, okay, well, I only get this brief window every 10 days with them. I'm going to make this count. And so come January 2019, I tried again. I just was like, let's roll up some characters and let's try doing something that isn't gaming this weekend. And they liked it. It didn't take much coercion. We started rolling up characters again. And I would say that they were open but cautious. And they were ready. That was the thing. They were ready. And it's very hard to define what that looks like, but they were. And so we started playing and it was wonderful. It was just freaking wonderful. Literally from the first game, it was wonderful. Like they really got it and they were having fun, because that's all you're looking for really is are you having fun? Are you entertained? You know? And that doesn't always mean laughter and humor. Fun is so many other things, right? And it gave me an opportunity to teach my children things that I think a father needs to teach their children, but without me crowbarring it in there and going, right, sit down, kids. Now daddy needs to talk to you about people who try and control you. All right. Now there'll be people in life that try and control. And it was like, well, I can do that. You know, there'll be people in life that will try to deceive you and tell you one thing, but and I was like, well, you sit a kid down and try and do that. See how well you do. You won't do well. I was like, I can bring these themes into our game for them to explore safely as well, because it's non-personal. It's less personal. There's a detachment there that allows them to explore certain things that I think are really important for somebody to explore without me sitting there lecturing them. And that's when I really started to see the gift of this game even beyond the immense gift that it already is. So yeah, they didn't take much coercing beforehand. And did you? The second part of your question, Dressur, is: and did you tell them much about past D&D stories to plant the seeds of D&D desire? Oh, for sure. They couldn't not hear about Nimblefoot. I've been talking to them and telling them these stories for years beforehand. Usually just dropping it in and talking about it. And they knew that Daddy played this weird game when he was a boy, and the character that he played felt like a description for his soul. That's the way I feel about it, is that like my first character, 10, was a way for me to explore me. Now, I wouldn't have told you that at the time as a 10-year-old kid, but it's a way for me to explore my own, who I was in the world. And so Nimblefoot, the thief, monk, psionic, was now that's what he is now. He started out as a thief, as a ragtag urchin thief on the streets, right? But that character that I rolled up, and I still have the very first character sheet, I'll show it you in future episodes. But that first character became was legend to my children. Was legend. I'd talk about it all the time, and I'd tell them stories about Dungeons and Dragons. And I think over time they started to become curious. Oh, and you know what else? When we would play Skyrim, and I would create a character in Skyrim, I would always create Nimblefoot. In fact, they roll their eyes at their dad even today, because if I start playing Skyrim, when I create a character, I create Nimblefoot. And that's all. That's all I ever create in Skyrim. And they're like, "Oh, Dad, why don't you try a different character?" And I'm like, "Nah." And so they knew about Nimblefoot third hand through these other experiences, hearing their dad talking about his childhood when I would play video games, whatever it was always through the lens of Nimblefoot, which to me is so much more than a D&D character. It's the expression of a part of me, right? Like I think probably all our Dungeons and Dragons characters is like an expression of a part of us in a way, right? It's a way we can sort of have fun with some part of us. Sometimes you maybe don't get that consciously, but it is in Finley's game. Finley runs a campaign. I play this barbarian, and like that's just a place to explore loyalty and aggression and protection, those kind of things. There's a place where I can explore those parts of me and not overthinking things. Right? And his name's Carson. He's a half-orc barbarian. And anyway, so yeah, it was they knew a lot of the D&D stories a little bit. They knew I had this character. And so this character for me was, when we first started playing, like 32 years old, something like that, 31, 32 years old, I had this character. And by the way, in the time between playing with my brother and when Nimblefoot, they actually met Nimblefoot, in the time between that, I would draw pictures of him. I would write up lore. I would tell stories. I started writing a novel that featured Nimblefoot. And I think it's something that in my 50s, I'll probably get to more writing. So it was wonderful to make that early decision. This will definitely be in the same world. And that my character could be somebody that my children could meet. That could be somebody they could meet. And they could meet my brother's character, And when they finally met him in game, it must have felt like they were finally meeting the man behind the stories. Yeah, kind of. Yeah. It was like, it's almost like if you could introduce your children to you as a child. That's what it felt like. That's what it felt like. It was like, meet the 15-year-old me. Meet the me that is sort of like, hey kids, here's your dad's soul made manifest. I know that sounds a bit big, but it really did feel a bit like that. And so they met him, and there was an opportunity very early on, about 4 or 5 games into this campaign, and we don't have this on the podcast because it was just before we started podcasting. There's a point where the characters almost had an early TPK. They have gone to an old abandoned keep that is overrun with undead. They're already battered from a encounter with a black dragon, a wormling, a small young black dragon. And then they get into the keep proper, and they're up against a wraith, and they're like 5th level. And they've got a relatively powerful NPC with them, Kilgar, but he's the tank. He's been taking all the hits, so he's not doing too well either. And then the Wraith, their first boss fight is this Wraith, and the Wraith drops Charlotte's character, Danae, just drops her. And then sort of moves towards Finley's character. And I cannot tell you, even now, I will never forget my son's face as I acted out the wraith coming towards him, like he's just dropped his sister. So Charlotte's out, right? Charlotte's out, and literally out, right? Dead. And the wraith advances on Finley's character, and Finley's 10 at the time. We were doing this, like he's 10. He's a little boy. He's cute, right? And his face as the wraith, it was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking, and it was also sort of like it was awesome. And I mean that in the truest sense of the word, because I saw my son in a narrative have the implications of dread and like, oh shit, this is real. And I saw all of that on my little 10-year-old boy's face. And it literally broke my heart. And as the DM, that was where like I wanted to save him. And so that was when Nimblefoot came in. It was the most clumsy ex machina ever. It was so clumsy. But I literally had apparate into the keep courtyard. Whoosh, you know, this old man with white hair, this little slight figure with white hair and pointy ears. And he just blasted the wraith back and sort of killed it pretty quickly, like in a round. And then comes over and puts his hands on Charlotte's chest and, you know, revivifies her. And introduces himself as Nimblefoot. And it was amazing. It was magic. It's a magical moment. And here's the thing about it, though. Here's the real thing about it. It bothered me. It bothered me horribly as a DM. Because I was like, that was such a clumsy ex machina to just, in the nick of time, right when they need it, this guy shows up. And it's my character, and he shows up and sort of saves the day. And it bothered me, and it bothered me. It bothered me for years, until when they got the opportunity, spoiler alert for campaign 1 here, to actually go back in time as a result of the casting by the 3 magisters of Aeon, the 3 greatest wizards of Aeon. When they got the opportunity to go back in time, I started, and I had about a year to do this, to really think this through. And I had diagrams to help my mind cope with the implications from a time travel perspective, because I didn't want to do multi-dimension time travel, you know, where it's like, oh, well, if you do something different, you create a new branch reality. I didn't want to do that. I think that's clumsy. I think that's easy to do that. Oh, don't worry, you can do anything. It creates a new universe. I didn't want to do that. So I wanted to do what's called weird, something like weird fluctuations, but it's a very particular branch of time travel conceptualization that I loved. And actually, scientifically, it's one of the most robust. And I was like, I like that one. And it's the one that isn't multi-dimensions, but allows the grandfather paradox to still make sense, right? Look up grandfather paradox. It's the idea that, you know, going back in time, if you killed your grandfather, then he would never have never had you, or had your father and dad had you, and, you know, so on and so forth. So you would never have gone back in time and killed him. So how would it be? You know, it's weird paradoxes, weird, what's it called? Weird, I've got it somewhere. It's a great way of sort of handling that. Excuse me a second. 2 seconds. Sorry, folks, 2 seconds. So we had this weird thing where it was like the characters, when they started talking about going back in time, I was like, ooh, there's been some periods during the game, not many, thankfully, but there have been some periods that have been a little kind of like, that's hard to explain logically. The time travel and the model that I use for time travel gave me the freedom to start to design things like how that very first Ex Machina, Deus Ex Machina with Nimblefoot showing up in the nick of time, how that could even be. And I was like, it can be explained because Nimblefoot already knew these people. He'd already met them. He'd already adventured with them. He'd already done everything. And he knew that they were going to die that day. They were going to die that day unless he determined that he would change that he would change that. And the very fact that he determined that at some point meant that they did live and they did continue. And it's mind-boggling, but I loved it. And so we were able to wrap up a lot of things. We were able to discuss how Charlotte's character would even get the sword, Celeste. Why would that platinum dragon that guarded the sword, why would it open up for her and allow her to take the sword? Is it just because she's the chosen one? Or is it that she had already wielded that sword? 1,400 years before, she'd already wielded it. So that sword knew her. So when she came to draw it for the very first time from the caverns beneath Fort Summerdust, where there's this holy, sanctified ground and there's this statue of a platinum dragon with a sword in it that nobody can draw the sword, right? Nobody can take this sword. Which obviously, feeds into Arthurian legend. But I was like, how can we make this even better? That sword, that platinum dragon did open up and allow her to take the sword really early on, like in game, I don't know, in game 8, say. The time travel allowed those things to make sense. They allowed them to make sense because, of course, she'd already wielded the sword. She'd already wielded it. How amazing is that? So Josseur says, bet that added a lot of improv to try and add logic as to why it happened. Like, right. Yeah. That's the thing with improv is like, I'd say I'm probably about 30% improv. 30% improv, 70% plan, right? And sometimes where I improv, I do cause trouble for myself, So that was magic, being able to do those things. It really, really was. And it meant that by the end of the campaign, after 3.5 years, the kids were able to go, wow, this epic rolling tale of these two heroes finally finishes. And it was amazing. So yeah, they're great. Thanks for the questions, Trisha. And so that was campaign 1 was, to my view, the introduction, to, it was really we're just getting started. We're just getting started. This was a way, in a big way, of bringing my children into this world, the spark of which was created by my brother with me back in 1987, when all we had was AD&D and D&D, right? That was it. We had Dungeons & Dragons, we had Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. A couple of years later, we got 2nd edition, and that was what I was kind of brought up on. But, I was introduced through the red box, through D&D. And that was how the spark, a playground for story and feelings and adventure were given a world. I think I brought the world to that and built out the world. So we had this massive playground for Charlotte and Finley to explore and play around in. And I was able, as a dad, to help them explore certain themes that I think it's really important for children to explore. And we could do it disguised as a tabletop role-playing game. And that's why I think it's the greatest game in the world. Truly, I love it. And I'm very excited by campaign 2 that's coming literally in about a month. we're going to be doing our first session, and I'm really, really excited. And the great thing is, now that my kids are older, we get to explore more complex themes, more nuanced themes, maybe get a bit grittier, get a bit more mature. And that's going to be fun. That's going to be fun, because sure as hell, I want to explore some things that probably weren't appropriate in campaign 1. We get to start to go there. And I'd strongly recommend, if you haven't watched session 0, we put our session 0 up here on YouTube, because I think it's really good. Not many of the Hollywoodized D&D streams sort of show you their session 0, right? It's much more of a production. Here we have a very small audience. At the time that I'm doing this, we have a very small, thankfully very loyal group of followers to our podcast. And if you're one of them watching this, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. We don't do this for the money or the sponsorships or any of that stuff. We don't have any of that stuff. It's not why we do it. It's not to say we wouldn't move towards those things, but for now, we're playing the game, and I'm exploring this game with my children, in the future with my stepchildren as well, and with my wife. We're getting married in a time that I'm doing this, literally in 9 days' time. So there's going to be a lot more to come, and it's why I think Dungeons and Dragons is one of the best things for families to explore, especially together, because of what it can allow you to explore that you otherwise might not be able to so easily. And I'm just so thankful for this game. I'm so thankful that my kids want to play it. And I think, we'll be talking more about rules and rulings and homebrewing and all these kind of things in future episodes, and in Behind the Screen as well, when we look at what's been going on in the campaign. We've got campaign 2 coming, and I'm so excited. We're going to be doing so much more with this channel as well. We might be streaming other games that we play. We've got my son's campaign, Finley's campaign, and we've got the campaign that I hope to get rolling with my extended family of children, stepchildren, wife, and there's going to be a lot, because I think there is a lot with D&D. D&D is great with your friends. I played it so much with my friends in my teenage years, but it's so good with family as well. And it's in a world where families become increasingly isolated to their screens. In particular, I think a game like this, where you can all sit around a table and have fun together and explore things together, is a magnificent gift. I really, really do. And so we are Every Tenday. We are D&D for families and young adventurers. And anyone who is interested in getting this game out to more young people, if you're a parent and you want to get it to your kids, man, this is the place for you. I hope you've enjoyed this first rather rambling episode of Talks Tenday. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a background in what this game really means to us. We want you to know that we're not American voiceover artists or anything like that. We're just, we're just a family here in the southwest of the UK. It's a bit like Hobbiton here, who play. And we love this game. And if you're along with us, welcome. We welcome you with open arms. And the great thing is, we're small enough at the moment that we can reply and respond to each and every one of you. So if you've got a question you want to ask about playing D&D, running D&D, playing with your family, your parents, if you're a parent playing with your kids, this is a place to come ask it. If you're thinking of homebrewing your own world, or creating or getting started or restarting this game, come talk to us about it. The great thing is, our strength is in our smallness, small but mighty, and we're going to be making efforts to not be so small. We want to get our game out to more people. And so there's this weird paradox, because it's like we love that it's small and mighty it feels really, really good. But we know that some people really like our game, and it's helped them start playing with their brothers and sisters and mums and dads and stuff. And so it's like, man, we want to do more of that. We don't want to lose the community feel. So while we are still small, you can reach us, super easily. Come hang out, come play with us. If you go to discord.everytenday.com, you can join our Discord and chat with us. We're online most of the time. The kids are online most of the time, and they're way more interesting than me. So talk to them because they're in the Discord most of the time. And if you're new to our podcast and you want to check it out, go to podcast.everytenday.com. You can listen to all the episodes that we've got. We've streamed the last 44 of them here on YouTube. And tell us what you like, tell us what you don't like, tell us what you think we could do better. We'd love to hear the bits that you like and don't like and all of that stuff. Obviously, we prefer more of the like than the dislike. But welcome to Every Tenday. This is Talks Tenday. I will speak to you very, very soon. Big love and bye for now.